What's up everybody, Adam here from Cape Crawlers, and today we're going to look at long travel shocks for the SCX24. Welcome back to the channel everybody. I am super excited for this video because I've got my hands on some of the new 54mm long travel shocks for the SCX24. So you know I love the flex and the articulation, and anything that gives me more room to flex, I'm going to take it. And I saw these 54mm shocks come out. I was all over these. I got 3 sets. I'm going to put them on 3 different rigs. But for this video, let's take a look at the long travel shock options that we've got on the market, kind of compare the ones that we've got available. We're going to look at the new Powerhobbies. We're going to look at the hot racing telescopic shocks, and we're going to look at the 43mm double barrels from Endura and or RC Lions. Those are some of the 3 popular options, I think. You know, the 43mm, the 48mm from hot racing, and now these bad boy 54mm. So let's take a closer look at these new Powerhobby shocks first, and then we'll start doing some comparisons. Let's take a look at these things. They are so long. This is crazy. Like almost 10th scale shocks. They're so big. So like most long travel shocks, you get 3 different spring options. They come with the black ones installed. There's a silver and gold set. I can tell you right off the bat, the black is very stiff. Very, very stiff. I don't know what you would put that on from 24 scale to see what these other ones feel like. It's usually they come with the softer ones installed, but not this time around. I hope anyways. I can't imagine that these would get stiffer. Oh yeah, the silver's less stiff. I would say the gold is the softest of the trio here. All 3 though feel too stiff for what I like. So I'm sure I'll go back to my typical setup, full droop setup with either no springs or the stock springs. We'll see how it goes. But man, let's take a look at these things. So the action feels really good. I've never used Powerhobby shocks before, but they've got excellent reviews and I've heard really good things about them. Nice and smooth. It's hard to tell about the action without having them on the rig, but they go through the motions of the shock really well. They compress quite small for such a long shock. Again, it's hard. Man, this black spring is so stiff. So again, you got the preload adjustment. Typical long travel shock setup, just longer body. So let's compare this to some other options that we have for long travel shocks available to us. Here I've got a hot racing telescopic shock here. The springs are taken out on this. Wow, look at the difference. I hope you can see that on camera. So the hot racing is a 48mm. Their telescopic shocks are the longer of their shocks, and then you can just see significant difference here. Here is a 43mm RC Lions unit here. So again, you can see these are 43mm eye to eye. It is smaller than the hot racing 48mm, significantly smaller than these new 54s. Look at that. These things are going to be long, long, long. Lots of travel. What about when they compress? So when they compress, they are still taller than the 43mm, which is understandable just because you've got more hardware in there. The body is just bigger. It's close to the hot racing. It's still a couple millimeters taller, I would say. So you get a longer shock, but you got to remember, when you're fully compressed, it's going to be taller as well. So from a ride height perspective, this is going to lift our chassis by a couple millimeters, just because they do not compress to the same length as the smaller shocks do. So I've got to consider that as well. If we look at this against a stock shock, look at that. It's about ½ an inch longer. This is wild. I'm anxious to try it out. So I've been really happy with the hot racing shocks. These are just so smooth. The action on the hot racing telescopes is just fantastic. I don't put grease or anything on them. They just work so smooth. I've had good luck with the RC lines too. They're not quite as smooth as the hot racings are, but I do think they are smoother than the Enduras, which I've used sparingly in the past because I just don't have the same success setting them up as I do with the RC Lions or other 43 millimeters for that matter. So of my long travel shocks, I think my first choice would be this style, and you can get this style of shock from a variety of different vendors. You can get it from Little Guy Racing Parts, Mofo RC, a number of vendors sell a very similar shock to this. This just happens to be the RC Lions brand. I have not tried the Mofo RC or the Little Guy Racing Parts 43 millimeters. I've heard that they work very well, but I gotta say that the manufacturers of these are probably all pretty similar. But that's just speculation. Again, on hot racing, it's fantastic. So I've tried the telescopes. I've got the telescopic shocks on the Gladiator and the JLU right now. They work fantastic. I've tried some of their other shocks as well. They all work really well. So hot racing just makes a very good product all around. So I'm very happy with those as well. But I'm super excited to try these long travel shocks. So I got the red. We're going to put these on the Gladiator. So why don't we look at the Gladiator now as it is with the hot racing shocks on there, and then we'll swap it over, and then we'll do some flex tests and some fun runs with the Gladiator with these new 54 millimeter shocks on it. So here's the Gladiator kind of flexing loud and proud on 7 tires here. Can do this pretty easily in the back because it's running the hot racing shocks to mount it to the frame with flex extensions as well. We can do the front also, but not quite as clean as the back. You can see it's able to grab on there. It's got enough lugs on the sidewall of the tire that it's able to get 7 tires, front and rear. So ton of articulation on this thing already. So let's set up the Powerhobbies in the same way. I've got these running stock springs upside down with the 1 O-ring trick. So I'm going to do the exact same setup with the Powerhobbies, and then we'll see how it flexes just on the table, and then we'll take it out on the course and see what this translates into from a real world performance perspective. So let's get after it. All right, check it out. Here is the Gladiator with the 54 millimeter Powerhobby shocks on here. They look gorgeous. I gotta say, I'm so happy with the red. The hot racing, super nice, but boy, these red anodized shocks look great on here. Happy to be back with the red. They are big. Look at that humongous range of travel on this thing. On the Gladiator, it did not raise the chassis much at all. Just look at the flex on that. Holy cow. It's like pretty much, look at it, 90 degrees just about. You pretty much stand on the outside of the tire. Wild. So much travel. This is insane. But like I was saying earlier, when how they collapse larger than other shocks didn't seem to impact the ride height of the Gladiator, which I'm very relieved of because I'd worked hard to get this thing to sit the way I want. So it didn't impact the ride height here, which I'm really happy about. I did the same setup I did with the hot racing shocks. I did the 1 O-ring at the top. I put the stock springs in here. I did put a little bit of grease on the shock shaft just to make sure it's nice and smooth. They feel buttery smooth. No issues right there with movement at all. So they look great. They feel great. So I'm anxious to go get this out on the rocks. So let's go give it a run, and then we'll come back with our thoughts. right, back from our run real quick. I just want to pop in here real quick. I couldn't wait, and I put these on the JLU also. So I bought the silver set for the JLU and threw those on there as well. This one I'm having complications with ride height. So it jacked it up pretty high. It reminded me of when I put the portal axles on the Gladiator. It made it sit pretty high. So what I ended up doing was I angled those front shocks back further here on the frame, and then I added flex blades, flex extensions, the Grizzly Works flex extensions on the rear, because they make it sit lower because the shock sits behind the axle. So that helped it sit a lot nicer, certainly in the back. What's happening in the front now is that I'm hanging up on my servo mount. So my bumper mounts and my servo are hanging up. If I can get this past the bumper mounts, that's how it should sit. Nice and low. That's what I'm looking for. But I got to shave down these bumper mounts. But anyway, just wanted to show you guys this because I did see that it did raise the chassis on the JLU quite a bit, and I had to take some measures to bring it back down. But overall, looks very good on this as well. That bumper, man, that thing is stuck on the servo. There we go. Holy cow. I got to fix that. But again, tons of travel. Huge amount of flex. So these are going to be fun. So let's talk about these shocks. So I actually reshot the ending of this video because of some new information has come out about these shocks, both on Instagram from other folks who have bought these and on eBay on the listing for where the Powerhobby shocks are sold. Some new information has come out. Some folks have posted pictures demonstrating that the length is not 54 millimeters. And after I was initially very enamored and very excited about these shocks, I took a more objective look at these shocks, doing some measurements, doing some more comparisons. And I got to say that the folks on Instagram were totally right, that I think these are more like a 48 millimeter shock, not a 54 millimeter. And what's interesting is going back to the eBay listing from Powerhobby, you can see, and I'll screenshot it here, you can see that they've since reduced the eye-to-eye length to approximately 47 to 48 millimeters. I am fairly certain that when I purchased these initially, it said 54 millimeters eye to eye, but now it looks like they've revised the listing to show more of a 47 to 48 millimeter, which I think is accurate to what they truly are. So to demonstrate this, let's take a closer look at these shocks again, and we can measure them a little more accurately to kind of show you exactly what I mean. All right, here we are, so I can show you what I mean by this. So let's take a look at this with my trusty speed square. So please excuse the dirty kind of rudimentary measuring device here. It's the best I've got, but it should at least get the point across here. So 54 millimeters roughly translates into about 2.1 inches. So eye to eye, if this was a true 54 millimeter, we'd be up here somewhere, but we can see we're clearly not there. The 48 millimeters from Hot Racing, 48 millimeters would equate to about 1.9 inches. And again, we're still pretty far below that as well. In fact, I'd probably say that the Powerhobbies are more like a 48 millimeter, an actual 48 millimeter. The RC Lions 43 millimeters are probably the truest to claim. 43 millimeter would be about 1.7 inches, I believe. So that one's probably true to form right there, I dare say, or at least the closest of the three. So this just gives you a visual comparison, a rough measurement here to show you what I mean talking about the claims of measurements here on these shocks. So what are the final thoughts on the Powerhobby shocks? Am I bummed out that they're not a true 54 millimeter? Yes. Do I regret buying them? No. They're still a fantastic shock. They look great, they function great, they were easy to set up, and they're still a really long travel shock. I mean, they are, I would say, a true 48 millimeter eye to eye, which is, as you can see from the measurements, they are definitely longer than the 43 millimeters that are most common on the market, and they are longer than the Hot Racing telescopic shocks, and almost half the price. At $26 for a set of these versus $40 for the Hot Racing, it's a bargain because I think they perform nearly as well, if not as well, as far as from a smoothness of operation standpoint. So I don't regret buying them at all, and I would definitely recommend them. They work fantastic. Powerhobby makes great products, and these shocks are no exception. So I don't regret buying them, and I would still recommend them if you're looking for a long travel shock. Just know that you're not getting a 54 millimeter shock. You're getting a 48 millimeter shock. And that's totally fine because they're still super long and are going to give you all that articulation and all that extra travel. So let me know your thoughts down below. Are you as bummed out as I am that they're not a true 54 millimeter shock? I was really looking forward to that. But I still like them. I like the color, I like the fit and finish, and I think they look great on the builds. So I'm still going to enjoy them, still going to have fun with them. But let me know your thoughts down below. Always want to hear from you guys. As always, I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so, and we'll see you in the next video.